morning. Welcome to day 78, DeStress series at Quantum's Liberty. Hope this day is finding you well. There's your water buddies. Good morning. This morning on the phone with us today, we have two delightful kids. They are Mayflower descendants, and we have Harlow and William with us today, and they have an extraordinary story that they wanted to talk about a little bit, both because of the Mayflower descendants and also because and they're concerned about climate change and also learning to cooperate and collaborate with all of those people on this great continent in the United States, where we can learn again from the Native American Indians on how we can best support our nation in a transition to a sustainable ecosystem and society that we can recycle products for building homes, things like that. So William's very interested in that. And then Harlow is a nurse. And the way they had their little pilgrimage was pretty interesting. They called to talk about that they had a lot of loss when they were younger. And so there were seven losses in 1 year, which was a lot. And so what they did was something pretty fascinating. They since they had lost everything pretty much and everyone, the two of them were who they had. So brother and sister went and they hitchhiked from where they grew up in New York, and they decided they were going to hitchhike across the country to for some reason, Nebraska or the Yukon. So they went north, and they had a tent, right, guys? So you guys had a tent and a bag of clothes, a little bit of food, and Harlow had her guitar. So they hitchhiked north, and they came to Niagara Falls, that's what it's called. And so the first night when they were camping alongside a little stream on the New York side, and their goal was to go over to Canada and then come across and then come down either to Nebraska or keep on going to the Yukon Highway. Who knows why, right, guys? But so that was the plan. So up they hitchhiked, and they saw a red-tailed hawk on their travels, and they knew that was where they would go down the path and create a little campsite there. So they spent the night right near the midst of Niagara Falls, but at the side of a busy road, and nobody knew they were there. So they just had a nice little camping area there, and being sustainable, keep on tapping, being sustainable, they knew how to set up a good campsite and clean everything up so it looks even better than when they got there. And then they headed west, after going across Niagara Falls, they went west, and they came through different provinces heading west. So they were both in kind of a state of being stunned after all these losses, but also in a state of grace. Because they had each other, and because they had a home in their tent, and they were traveling safely in good places to stay. Just at the side of the road, they would find water or a place to camp. And one night, Harlow said the tent, they woke up and it was covered with mosquitoes, but when they came outside, they found that what they had pitched their tent right in the middle of was all these blueberries. So they ate and ate and ate and had a fantastic breakfast, and then they went on their way. The next part of the trip was they came through sunflower fields, and this big 18-wheeler truck picked them up. And on the front of it, it said, "Bat out of hell." Yeah, H-E-L-L. And so that was named after a song. And that guy was really nice. They were in that big 18-wheeler truck and looking over all these sunflowers as far as the eye could see. And they said that the prevalence of nature and the beauty and vastness of this land that they were seeing far, far overwhelmed any healing that needed to be done on their hearts for the generosity of the land, and that which it provided for them. So then they got into, after that guy took them for a little while, and they got to sleep in the back of the cab, as the trucker drove over these miles and miles and miles and miles of sunflowers. And then they got into a car, so now they were traveling underneath the tops of the sunflowers. And they could see that there were prairie dogs, and then there was a little road, and the guy said, "You want to come sleep in our little village?" So they did. They went on this little road. It turned in the middle of the sunflowers. Who would ever have known it was there, is what she says. And so then you guys ended up at, yeah, it was a little town, and in the midst of all these sunflowers. So you would never know it was there. It was just underneath all the sunflowers. And so they had, it was like a general store, a post office, and one house where everybody in the town kind of lived. And so it was kind of a commune-like thing. And then they got a ride back out the next morning, and they were told to be very, very, very leery of the Manitoba Indians, who were very dangerous. So they were set at the side of the road on a little knoll, and it was a day of remembrance for some of the people who had passed away a year earlier that day. So they had a little service, a memorial underneath some trees, and then a little knoll, and then they started walking. And so they got to this little building, a structure in the middle of a lot of land. So the sunflowers had stopped, and they were in Manitoba. So they came to this structure. They had a little bit of money, just a little bit, how much? Like maybe $30, yeah. So they were in this restaurant, very, very, very busy. All these people talking around them. And this one person came up to Harlow and said, "You know, you have quite a radiance about you. I think that, you know, you could come to our powwow." And Harlow said, "Oh, you know, what is a powwow?" And, "Oh, it's a musical gathering. We play drums, and we have a big fire, and we make a fire pit. And we think that you have an energy about you that you could actually do the fire walk." And so Harlow was like, "What's that?" "That's like walking across coals." So she's picturing that, and she said, "I think I can do that. Yeah, I see myself that I could do the fire walking." But she said, "I had a lot of loss, and I'm afraid that my grief will overcome the presence of the moment. It will come in, and I won't succeed because of grief." And they said, "Well, what happened?" And she explained these 7 people had passed away, and one was very, you know, this day was very important because it was 1 year to the day. So they said, they all came and said, "Oh, we, you know, we want you to know." They had a little meeting for a few minutes, and they came back to Harlow and her brother and said, "What do you think about if we would like to pay for you to have a room here in this little structure, because there are a lot of bears out there, and there's been like 7 bear maulings in the last 2 weeks. So Harlow and William were like, well, we don't have any money, we can't afford to do that, because it was like $60. So they said, we're just going to sleep in our tent. And they said, oh no, we've all talked about this, and we really like you. We're the Manitoba Indians, and we want to pay for you to have a room tonight in this structure and sleep safely, and then get out of this area of the, of the where the bear maulings are tomorrow. So, and in return, what you can do is you can sing a song for us in the morning, your choice. At the end of the night, everybody will come and hear your song. So in the morning, so they had a nice night in that structure and slept well. And in the morning, bright and early in the morning, everybody woke them up and they gave them a good breakfast. And all these Indians had gathered in this dirt driveway right next to the structure. And there was no sound, no sound at all. Everybody ate in silence in the beginning for the breakfast and honored the food that they had with the rising of the sun prayer. And they also all gathered around Harlow and William, and Harlow played them the song, "Morning Has Broken, like the first morning. Blackbird has spoken like the first bird." And so she also played a song from The Sound of Music on guitar, sitting in the dusty, hot dirt morning, and that was let's start at the very beginning, a very good place to start. So it's Do Re Mi. So they went on their way hitchhiking, and they decided to come down into Nebraska. Now, Nebraska, so that was quite a pilgrimage that both their ancestors had and the kids had. And the pilgrimage that we're talking about now that needs to be taken and so carefully tended to is one where Harlow actually went to thank. There was a gathering of Indians in Connecticut, and they were doing dances, and she went to thank the Manitoba Indians for their generosity. So the chief or the head dancer was Blackbird, and he was a very angry person, and she had been told not to go up to them because they might not treat her well, given that she was Mayflower descendancy. So she went up and she said, "I know that I'm Mayflower descendant, but I also grew up on a farm, and so I know about cultivating the land. And so not all Mayflower descendants are awful or plunderers, and we can be taught. And we would like to know how to create a shift with climate change." And Black Hawk at first was very, very angry at her and wouldn't talk. And eventually he said, "What you have is inside of you. You have that understanding. You have everything that's inside of you. What you don't know is that there are ways of being in this world that are directly related to the immortal or the quantum field or spirit, and that it's not only the things of this world, the structures and the like the politics and the rules and the beliefs that guide you, but your heart is what guides you." And that is what propelled all of you to have a natural communion with spirit, and for Harlow and Blackbird to have a communion at that time. So one thing that we want to bring about today now, Harlow is in critical care medicine, and so is her friend Sarah Swistak. And so they've gone from all these patterns seeing COVID-19, and they say that the nurses have pandemic fatigue. And so the big thing that their head doctor, critical care, Dan Johnson, at the University of Nebraska Medical Center, which is the hugest, largest, and the nation's infectious disease hospital. All 10 floors are filled with COVID-19 right now. And Becky Long, a COVID ICU nurse, said that they're short 45 to 60 nurses, less than the number of hospital beds that they have. So that's just twice as many people are twice as sick as they always are in the ICU, and they're also staying 3 times as long. And what Dan Johnson of the critical care MD, one of the critical cares, he said that the big thing that's a problem is that it's preventable, right? We can wear a mask and socially distance and follow science, but the Utah governor is Pete Ricketts, and on Tuesday he came out and said, no mask. We're going to have some restrictions when all of the beds in the whole entire state are 1/4 full of COVID people. But we're going to, even after that, after they hit 1/4 of every single hospital in the whole state is filled, then they're going to have indoor dining and allow the gyms and the churches to still stay open, and you can gather if there's less than 10 people indoors. So, but no mask still. So the thing that Dan Johnson was saying, it's the nightmare is that it was all preventable. And also what Dan Johnson said too was that people have the mistaken belief that if the government allows them to do something, it's safe to do so. And unfortunately, so far, Governor Pete Ricketts is not well enough informed by the people they really need to communicate. So we have that inside of us, that ability to communicate, even though Blackbird and Harlow had a very, very angry initial start of the conversation. Through the love in their hearts and through the compassion of knowing that one doesn't understand the other, like Harlow had to understand more fully the tragedy that her people brought to the Indians when they came here and plundered the resources. And so now we need to, in gratitude, bring that resource back online so that the United States can again be a spiritual leader in bringing the best of all worlds together in unity, because we're all in this together, whether it be the climate or whether it's the COVID. So let's tap on a little bit of the DeStress for that news and the beauty of that story, and give thanks and gratitude for our health and for our homes, for each other, and for our creativity. So even though, repeat after me, thanks for sharing your story, Harlow and William. It's beautiful, and also for Blackbird's part, and thanks to the Manitoba Indians for saving you. And so that's from the Canadian Manitoba Indians. She was talking in Connecticut to that group. So this is, we give thanks, even though, repeat after me, I have anger inside of me, that the world seems to be going upside down, I deeply and completely love myself. Even though I have this anger inside of me, that there's chaos and confusion, I deeply accept and love myself. Even though I have this confusion and anger inside me about what's the right thing to do next, I deeply accept and love myself. exactly as I am. This confusion and anger, this confusion about the right thing to do, I can listen to science. I know I can wear a mask. I can communicate and use my words to explain things that need to be explained. I am that person. I walk as that person. I talk and think as that person. I am that person, sharing communication. I am in radiant health, sharing my knowledge, and being that knowledgeable person in mind and in body and in spirit. In gratitude to all of you. Thank you.